Hello everyone, this is Fred Haight speaking, and this is a souvenir that I've prepared for all of us who went to China in August with Avalon. It was too long to put into one thing, so this is just the first half. I also added a handful of photos from Japan, Korea, and even the internet, just to keep it interesting. There's only one place to begin any tour of China, and that is, of course, the North Pole. Look on a globe, not a map, and you will see that in fact the shortest distance between Toronto and Beijing comes close to the North Pole, and that's where we flew. There were only 12 of us in our group besides our tour guide Vicky, so we got to know each other pretty well, and it was a very good group. Here we are in front of the Great Wall of China, so I'll introduce everybody one by one. This is the Michelson family from somewhere near Boston. Rob and Diane on the outside, and their daughters Amanda and Cammie on the inside. Amanda was celebrating her bat mitzvah, so got to pose with a panda. That's pretty cool. Rob has been coming to China on and off for 20 years because his company produces there. This time, the entire family got to come and pay a visit. Judith and Ian McClellan from New Zealand. Ian is a builder who noticed many things done right, but also many things done wrong in China. I don't think he approved of this wiring job in Xi'an. Judith informed us of many things, including the difference between New Zealanders and Australians. Jim and Kathy Hawkins from Kansas. Jim and Kathy are conservative Republicans, Christians, and missionaries, people with strong beliefs, but who back up those beliefs with action. We had many agreements and disagreements, but it was always principled. Jim teaches economics at a university, including debt financing and entrepreneurship. Kathy is a woman of many intellectual pursuits who, after this tour, proceeded to a missionary work in a small village in India, where I believe they said they have to fight off tigers. Jim got a kick out of this Obama t-shirt, but I don't think the Chinese meant it as critically as he did. Marvin and Patty Taka, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from Illinois, close to St. Louis. Marvin is a retired executive from Anheuser-Busch. They make Budweiser beer, so I thought Marv might get a kick out of this scene from Japan, where the bartender appears to be putting a Slurpee on top of a beer, but it's Kirin beer, and it's actually a layer of ice, so it really is the coldest beer in town. Patty is a quiet woman, but a very compassionate one. When Jay fell ill, Patty picked up on it immediately and assisted her from beginning to end. Marvin missed his shot of the Olympic Stadium, but I was lucky enough to get one, so here it is. Then there's Jay and I. Jay is a retired music teacher with a degree in music and piano performance. She's sung in many professional choruses, all the great masterworks, and volunteers at a historical society in her hometown. I am also a musician. I specialize in making videos like this and falling down and hitting my head. Last but not least, we have our tour guide, Vicky. You could not ask for a better tour guide. Vicky is 35 years old. She was at the famous Tiananmen Square demonstrations in 1989. Though she was only 9 years old at the time, they helped shape her thinking. Vicky belongs to a younger generation that is still not satisfied with the amount of progress made in China. They want to see more. Vicky is also an English major and spoke English at least as well as the rest of us. She commented that she knew ours would be a good group because everybody took turns pushing the wheelchair. She looked after every detail as we toured China and prided herself in never having lost a single client ever, though I gave her a run for her money. Before moving on to the tour itself, I have to show you some hilarious photos of mistranslations into English from Chinese. What? Double what? But when you open the doors, you see what they're talking about. Vicky kept us informed of where the 5-star bathrooms were in China. Jim discovered chairs reserved for the old and weak at an airport and decided, well, maybe he'd better claim both of them. until Ian decided to fight it out with him over who would get the old and weak chairs. My favorite was at a Korean railroad station, though. A special line, disabled access for the old, the feeble, and the national man of merit? The old, the feeble, and big shots? Then there are signs that you would rather not see translated into English. I was surprised by how bilingual China is between Chinese and English. In the airports, almost all of the highway signs are Chinese and English. The Chinese have way too many pedestrians to fool around with walk and don't walk signs, so they just build huge civilian overpasses. And it seems like an easy enough place to find your way around. Here in the Beijing airport, a bicycle is presented almost as a museum piece. Used to be the main means of transportation. Now they've replaced it with the traffic jam. But in Japan, they have thousands of bicycles. They even have parking lots and meters for them. Staying with Japan for another minute, the cab drivers in Japan all wear suits. This is Honda, who has been driving for 50 years, and the seats are lined with lace. Jay and I expected that in such a populous country as China, we'd have a very small hotel room, but this room at the Beijing Fairmont is the biggest hotel room we've ever had, anywhere. Well, Avalon called this day 2. I can't really conceive of a 13-hour plane ride as part of a vacation, so I'm saying we started day 1 out at Tiananmen Square, the largest public square in the world. Vicky estimated at least 500,000 people there that day. Why are all these people standing in line? They are standing in line for hours just for the chance for a few seconds to see the memorial to Chairman Mao, who's treated almost as a god in China these days, in this his mausoleum. Why all the umbrellas? Chinese ladies like to appear pale. In the West we tan, and there they avoid the sun. After passing through several small sub-entrances to the Forbidden City, we finally emerged at the real entrance. No, not that, this, the Meridional Gate. The Chinese presumed that the prime meridian must pass through the imperial city. Where else would it go? It has 5 gates, and only the emperor himself was allowed to walk through the middle gate. The Chinese don't call themselves China. The British took that from dishes. They call themselves the Middle Kingdom. Next we come to the huge outer court where the emperor came to meet foreign dignitaries and conduct affairs of state and diplomacy. The outer court has 5 bridges passing over what they call golden water, and yes, you're right, this photo is lifted from the internet. China dominated the culture of most of Asia, including Korea, Vietnam, even Japan, and thought, probably correctly, that all important affairs of state and diplomacy would take place here in the Forbidden City. This building at the center of the outer court is called the Hall of Supreme Harmony. As you proceed toward the inner court, the buildings seem to get smaller and more manageable, like the Hall of Complete Harmony, and I'm not sure if one of these is it or not, where the emperor and his staff went about their daily work. At 1,200 acres, the Forbidden City is by far the world's largest imperial palace. Let's take a few photos to compare it to the main imperial palace in Seoul, Korea, which at 106 acres is only 1/12 the size. Here's the gate to the palace, which is 3 entrances. Compare that to the Meridional Gate in Beijing. Here is the outer court, and here is the entrance to the inner court in the Korean palace. Though I find the Korean palace more artistic in some ways, it must have seemed to the Chinese like their poor trailer park cousins, and perhaps we can get an idea of how intimidating China's culture was to the rest of Asia. Now let's return to the Forbidden City in Beijing, China. This is called the Hall of Mental Cultivation. And this object with the hole in it is made out of solid jade. There is some reason why the color green begins to become important at this point, but I can't remember what it is. Construction of the Forbidden City began in the year 1407, around the same time as the beginning of the European Renaissance, and just a few decades into the Ming Dynasty, the most successful and stable period in Chinese history, which ruled for 276 years, the Ming Dynasty. We ended the tour of the Imperial Palace with the gardens, beautiful gardens that feature a special type of porous rock that is only cultivated in one lake in all of China. There is much more that could be said about the Forbidden City, but we don't have the time and I don't have the knowledge. Next we toured the Summer Palace, which was built totally at the behest of the Dragon Lady. We heard a lot about the Dragon Lady during this tour. Dragon does not refer to her personality. The dragon is a sign of power in China, usually reserved for males, but this lady ruled from behind the scene for decades. There is a brightly covered walkway that one can take around the grounds. Here we are walking along it. There are several pavilions along the walkway where one can exit or enter. Here is a ceiling of one of those pavilions. Here are some views seen from the walkway. This is the pagoda as seen from the walkway, and this is the pagoda behind the walkway. Many people chose to walk around the lake. We took this, the dragon boat. Here's the view from inside the dragon boat. Here is the Summer Palace as seen from the water. And here's a dragon boat that never sailed. Partially it wasn't meant to, it's made out of marble, but I believe the Dragon Lady also started running out of money. That night we were welcomed with a Peking duck dinner at this famous restaurant, whatever its name is. Here's the chef, I believe, cutting the duck into exactly 208 pieces or something like that. We had our own room, a round table with the Lazy Susan, and it was great. Before attempting to climb the Great Wall of China, we had a very important stop to make: shopping. It was our first shopping trip, but they were all at either government-run or government-approved stops where we knew we would be getting the right thing for our money, and we received an interesting lecture on this subject, like jade. Look at this dragon, this eagle, this ship, all made out of solid jade. They were for sale, but none of us had an extra $17,000 to drop, minus shipping, so we settled for the $25 specials in this store. I was compared to Buddha several times because of my belly, and I wouldn't have minded so much if they had left money behind like they did for him. This, by the way, is not a painting, but woven out of silk. We were informed that there was an easy path for climbing the Great Wall and a difficult path. Guess which one we all took. The view as we climbed the wall, though, did get more and more beautiful. This is the view from the third tower on the south side. Jim was the only guy I saw climbing the wall with a cane, though, and he has a video of himself doing it to prove it. Jim also took a video of me climbing the wall to prove that I really did it, too. Uh-oh, he's slowing down, and he's grabbing onto that railing for dear life. Good idea, Jim. Photograph the scenery instead for a minute. These people look absolutely amazed that I made it at all. Here's the view from the top. And you would think that the descent should have been easier, but somehow it wasn't. Chairman Mao said that you're not a hero until you've climbed the Great Wall. Here's a Chinese family celebrating their herodom. And here is the Michelson family celebrating theirs and apparently trying out the Chinese suntan method. What I'm about to say now may seem heretical, and I'm in admiration of the wall for being ahead of its time in the use of bricks and stuff like that, but frankly, it was a dumb idea. And a brutal one. Workers who died making it had their bones incorporated as part of the wall. Genghis Khan said that the wall is only as strong as the men who defend it, and he was right. He got through by bribing a couple of guards who hadn't been paid for so long that they were getting hungry. Centuries later, a disgruntled general opened the gates for the Manchurians, who also conquered China. So twice, China was conquered by somebody simply opening up the gates and letting the enemy through. They never had to climb the wall. And look, here I am, standing right on top of it. Our next visit was the tombs of the Ming Dynasty. I wasn't very fond of it because they're all underground. You can't see them. Here's a bell tower where the emperor was supposed to come and visit the tombs of his ancestors, but not tarry for too long. That evening we took in a show at the Red Theater on Kung Fu. It involved an orphan child being raised by Shaolin monks. They never called him Grasshopper, though. Day 3 began with a rickshaw ride around a very old section of Beijing called Hutong. Here's an army of rickshaws. My driver had a weighty task. As you can see here, Hutong is a very old and formerly very rich part of Beijing. You can tell how wealthy the former residents were by the number of these blue beams on the front of their houses. This is a 2-beam house that wasn't all that wealthy, but this is a 4-beam house that was. When the communist government took over, they decided that this area should belong to the people, but they subdivided the very rich houses into small apartments. If I remember correctly, this formerly 2-beam house now supports 14 apartments. So now it's still in many ways a very poor area, but at the same time it's also very trendy. And Vicky assured us that this really does mean donkey burger and warned us never to order a hot dog in China. We visited a woman inside her home, which I believe consisted of 4 small buildings. Her family had been allowed to keep it. She estimated that it would now be worth about $11 million. After Hutong, we flew to Xi'an. There, we visited this bell tower where we had a tea tasting. And it was great. It was as sophisticated as a Bordeaux wine tasting. I never knew you could do that. Little sniffer cups comparing all these different types of tea and then deciding which ones to buy. And I think we bought quite a lot of tea. Here's the view from the bell tower. Here's the bell, and here's its clangor in the shape of a fish. That evening we were treated to a great dinner and show on the Tang Dynasty. Here's one of the actresses posing with Jay. In terms of costume, music, stage setting, and everything else, I thought it was the best show that we saw by far. The Tang Dynasty, which lasted from the year 618 to 906, was considered a golden age for China, and its capital was in Xi'an, before the capital moved to Beijing. That's why we were seeing the show there. One of the reasons it was a golden age is that China during this period reached outwards. They developed the Silk Road and traded all the way as far west as Egypt. And exposure to new societies and civilizations is always healthy, as all of us travelers know. To put those centuries in perspective, Europe at that time was in a dark age, still reeling from the collapse of the Roman Empire. In fact, the most advanced part of Europe was southern Spain, run by the Muslims. The Arab Renaissance had done much to begin to revive European culture. Here is some of the music and dance from the Tang Dynasty show. This fellow is the world's greatest virtuoso on a 3,000-year-old pan flute that imitates birds. And with that, we ended day 3. We began day 4 by driving by this wonderful statue, the Emperor and his concubine. Then arrived at the center just outside of Xi'an, where the work on the terracotta soldiers is done. I had seen them years ago in Toronto, but that was 120, and I was not prepared for over 6,000. This is called Pit 1, where most of them are. They go back to almost 300 BC, to the very first Chinese emperor of the Qin dynasty. It's spelled Qian, but pronounced Qin. That's him, I believe, swinging away with his concubine. The emperor's tomb is inside this mound, which has never been opened. The soldiers are not inside it, but appear to be guarding it. The Chinese have gone to great lengths to put them in the military formation that they think they were first arranged in. They have a flank, as you can see. Some of them are facing the side. They have a sense of rank. Clearly the men in front of the horses are of a higher rank, probably generals, those behind lower, and there's a difference in the headgear. Amazingly, these statues had different clothing and different physical features in order to represent all the different ethnic groups that comprised China. These guys clearly look different than this guy. This guy is at the back of Pit 1, where there's lots of work going on. I get the sense that the Chinese are not trying to present this as some type of artistic presentation, but as a work in progress. These pieces are all meticulously labeled. Some poor person has tedious work ahead of them, and I don't know how many there are left to assemble. These guys all seem to have lost their heads, perhaps in battle. This horse has a bridle made out of metal. There are over 40,000 weapons that the soldiers have, and they're not made out of terracotta, they're made out of bronze, and they also had developed chromium plating back then, almost 300 BC. Originally, they were painted very bright colors, but the paint oxidizes quickly on contact with air, and the statues turn gray. Here's a bit of color left, but in the gift shop, miniature figures are painted brightly the way they first appeared. In another building behind glass, they have more interesting figures, like this guy. This guy is clearly leading a horse, and this guy has a chariot with a whole team of horses. This guy is a standing archer, seen from different angles. He's missing his weapon. It's hard to match the weapons with the soldiers. Remember how long ago this was. Here's a crouching archer, seen from different angles. Seen from behind, he almost looks alive. The gift shop has full-sized replicas available for a price, including shipping. One advantage may be that if you had this army guarding your house, you wouldn't need an alarm system. Here's Jay touching the Emperor's belly for good luck. Kathy Hawkins has been teaching this stuff for 12 years. She's an expert on these matters. She believes that the Emperor's tomb should be opened. Who knows what we might find there? And that also that the United States has offered to China to help in preserving the colors. She wanted to jump right into the pit and change what they were doing. My own thoughts are a bit different. Remember what I said about the Great Wall? Magnificent technological accomplishments in the service of a really stupid idea? Xi'an is perhaps one of the only walled cities left in China, so we visited. Here's the main gate, and here's below the main gate. There are guardhouses all along in both directions. You can also see a moat paralleling the guardhouses. Here's Rob as a member of, I guess, the Imperial Guard. And here's the actual guard, who does not appear amused. We visited a Buddhist temple built in the year 652. How can I possibly know such things? I'm reading the pamphlet we all got. I wondered why I had so little memory of this place, and then I realized, oh yeah, that's where I fell down and hit my head. Fortunately, Jim caught me, and it was only the weight of my own head that hit the ground, or it might have been a lot worse. The Buddha said a prayer for me, and I was okay. They worship 3 Buddhas here. I can't remember exactly what that's all about, but it seems interesting. This is a functioning place of religious worship, and for the faithful, not a tourist attraction. You have to respect and honor that, whatever your opinions of Buddhism might be. That night was the first free night that Avalon gave us, so we all just enjoyed a long private dinner in the luxurious Shangri-La Hotel in Xi'an. Free time was greatly appreciated, but we also understood why Avalon was pushing us so hard. There is a lot to see, a lot of travel time involved, and if you think about what we have done in 4 days, it's rather amazing. Although I do wonder how they kept the electricity on in Xi'an. So that's the end of part 1. Part 2 will begin with the obvious subject, polar bears. Oh, sorry, I mean panda bears.